Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to talk about something very powerful. How to train your brain daily. Because the truth is, your brain is like a muscle. If you train it, it becomes stronger. If you ignore it, it becomes weaker. Most people want success, but they don't train their mind. They focus on results, but ignore the habits. In this video, we will learn 8 powerful ways to train your brain daily, so you can improve your focus, thinking, and overall life. So watch this video till the end, because small daily habits can create big life changes. Let's begin. Lesson 1. Read daily. The first way to train your brain is read daily. Now understand this clearly. Reading is not just a habit. It is a mental workout. Just like your body needs exercise, your brain also needs training. And reading is one of the best ways to do it. Now let's go deeper. When you read, your brain becomes active. You don't just see words, you process them. You imagine situations. You understand meanings. You connect ideas. Now imagine this. You read every day. What happens? Your mind becomes sharper. Now you start thinking better. Now here is something very important. Reading improves memory. Because every time you read, your brain stores information. It remembers words. It remembers ideas. It remembers patterns. Now imagine this. You keep reading daily. What happens? Your memory becomes strong. Now you can recall information easily. Now here is the powerful shift. Reading improves focus. Because when you read, you focus on one thing for a long time. Now imagine this. You sit quietly and read, without distractions. What happens? Your attention improves. Now you can concentrate better in studies, work, and life. Now let's go even deeper. Reading builds knowledge. Now imagine this. Every day you learn something new. What happens? Your understanding grows. Now you see the world differently. Now here is something very powerful. Knowledge gives you confidence. Because when you know more, you feel more prepared. Now imagine this. You speak with knowledge. What happens? People listen to you. Now your confidence increases naturally. Now here is something very important. Reading also improves your thinking. Now imagine this. You read different ideas. What happens? Your brain learns to analyze. Now you don't think in a limited way. Now you think deeply. Now here is something powerful. A strong thinker makes better decisions. Now imagine this. You face a problem. What happens? Instead of reacting, you think. Now you find better solutions. Now let's go even deeper. Reading also improves your language. Now imagine this. You read regularly. What happens? Your vocabulary improves. Now your speaking becomes better. Now your communication becomes clear. Now here is something very important. You don't need to read difficult books. Start simple. Read stories. Read articles. Read anything useful. Now imagine this. You read just 15 to 20 minutes daily. What happens? Your brain improves slowly. Now your growth becomes consistent. Now here is something very powerful. Consistency is more important than intensity. Now imagine this. You read a little every day. What happens? Over time, you become very knowledgeable. Now here is something very important. What you feed your mind becomes your thinking. Now imagine this. You read positive and useful content. What happens? Your mindset becomes strong. Now your life improves. Now let me give you a powerful line to remember. Reading daily is like training your brain. The more you read, the stronger and smarter you become. So from today, don't skip reading. Don't waste your time on useless content. Feed your brain with knowledge. Because when your brain grows, your life grows. Lesson 2. Meditate daily. The second way to train your brain is meditate daily. Now understand this clearly. Meditation is not about doing something. It is about slowing down. Now let's go deeper. In today's world, your mind is always busy. Too many thoughts, too many distractions, too much noise. Your brain never gets rest. And because of this, you feel stressed, you feel overwhelmed, you lose focus. Now imagine this. You give your mind a few minutes of silence every day. What happens? Your brain relaxes. Now your thoughts become clear. Now here is something very important. Meditation reduces stress. Because when you sit quietly and focus on your breath, your mind slows down. Now imagine this. You are calm. What happens? Your body relaxes. Now your stress decreases. Now here is the powerful shift. A calm mind is a strong mind. Now let's go even deeper. Meditation improves focus. Now imagine this. You train your mind to stay in one place, to focus on your breath. What happens? Your attention becomes stronger. Now you can focus better in work, study, and daily life. Now here is something very powerful. Focus is a skill, and meditation trains it. Now imagine this. You don't get distracted easily. What happens? Your productivity increases. Now your work improves. Now here is something very important. Meditation also increases awareness. Now imagine this. You become aware of your thoughts. You observe them without reacting. What happens? You understand your mind better. Now you don't get controlled by your thoughts. Now here is the powerful shift. You control your mind, instead of your mind controlling you. Now let's go even deeper. Most people react instantly. They feel anger, and they react. They feel stress, and they panic. Now imagine this. You meditate daily. What happens? You pause, you think, you respond calmly. Now your reactions improve. Now your life becomes peaceful. Now here is something very powerful. Meditation builds emotional control. Now imagine this. You don't get angry easily. You don't get stressed quickly. What happens? You stay stable. Now your mindset becomes strong. Now here is something very important. You don't need hours to meditate. Even 5 to 10 minutes daily is enough to start. Now imagine this. You sit quietly. Close your eyes. Focus on your breath. What happens? Your mind slows down. Now your thoughts become clear. Now here is something powerful. Meditation is like cleaning your mind. Now imagine this. You remove unnecessary thoughts. What happens? You feel lighter. Now your brain works better. Now let's go even deeper. Meditation also improves decision-making. Now imagine this. Your mind is calm. What happens? You think clearly. Now you make better choices. Now here is something very important. A peaceful mind creates a powerful life. Now imagine this. You start your day with meditation. What happens? Your whole day becomes better. Now you stay focused. Now you stay calm. Now let me give you a powerful line to remember. Meditate daily, because a calm mind is your greatest strength. So from today, take a few minutes for yourself. Sit in silence. Focus on your breath. Because when your mind becomes calm, your life becomes clear. Lesson 3. Write ideas. The third way to train your brain is write your ideas. Now understand this clearly. Your mind is full of thoughts, but if you don't capture them, you lose them. Now let's go deeper. Every day, your brain creates ideas, small ideas, big ideas, random thoughts. but most people ignore them. They think, I will remember this later. But later, they forget. Now imagine this. You don't write your ideas. What happens? Your thoughts disappear. Now your creativity is wasted. Now here is something very important. Your brain is for thinking, not for storing everything. Now imagine the opposite. You write your ideas daily. What happens? You capture your thoughts. Now nothing is lost. Now here is the powerful shift. Writing creates clarity. Now let's go even deeper. When your ideas stay in your mind, they are not clear. They are messy. They are confusing. Now imagine this. You write them down. What happens? Your thoughts become organized. Now you understand them better. Now here is something very powerful. Clarity leads to better decisions. Now imagine this. You clearly see your thoughts. What happens? You choose wisely. Now your actions improve. Now here is something very important. Writing increases creativity. Now imagine this. You write ideas every day. What happens? Your brain starts creating more ideas. Because it knows. These ideas are valuable. Now here is the powerful shift. The more you write, the more you think. Now let's go even deeper. Writing also improves problem solving. Now imagine this. You have a problem. Instead of thinking too much, you write it down. What happens? You see it clearly. Now you find solutions faster. Now here is something very powerful. When you write, you slow down your thinking. And slow thinking creates deep thinking. Now imagine this. You take time to write. What happens? You think deeply. Now your understanding improves. Now here is something very important. Writing builds self-awareness. Now imagine this. You write your thoughts, your feelings, your ideas. What happens? You understand yourself better. Now your mindset becomes stronger. Now here is something powerful. Most successful people write daily. Because writing helps them think clearly. Now imagine this. You build this habit. What happens? Your brain becomes sharp. Now your thinking becomes powerful. Now let's go even deeper. You don't need to write perfectly. You don't need grammar. You don't need structure. Just write. Now imagine this. You write freely. What happens? Your ideas flow naturally. Now your creativity grows. Now here is something very important. Even one idea can change your life. Now imagine this. You write one idea daily. What happens? Over time, you have many powerful ideas. Now your future becomes strong. Now here is something very powerful. Your thoughts are your wealth, if you capture them. Now let me give you a powerful line to remember. Write your ideas, because what you don't write, you lose. So from today, don't trust your memory. Don't ignore your thoughts. Don't let ideas disappear. Write them. Save them. Use them. Because when you start writing your ideas, you start training your brain to think better. Lesson 4. Remove distractions. The fourth way to train your brain is remove distractions. Now understand this clearly. A distracted mind can never become a powerful mind. Now let's go deeper. In today's world, distractions are everywhere. Your phone, social media, notifications, endless scrolling. And slowly, your attention becomes weak. Now imagine this. You try to focus on something important, but every few minutes, you check your phone. What happens? Your focus breaks. Now your work becomes slow. Now here is something very important. Every distraction steals your attention. Now imagine this. You keep switching between tasks. What happens? Your brain becomes tired. Now you feel exhausted. even without doing much. Now here is the powerful shift. Focus is your greatest asset, and distractions destroy it. Now let's go even deeper. Your brain is not designed for constant interruption. Now imagine this. You keep checking messages, watching short videos, jumping from one thing to another. What happens? Your mind becomes restless. Now you cannot sit still. Now you cannot focus deeply. Now here is something very powerful. Deep focus creates high-quality results. Now imagine this. You remove distractions. You focus on one task. What happens? You complete it faster. Now your work improves. Now here is something very important. Distractions also reduce your thinking ability. Now imagine this. You never sit in silence. You are always consuming content. What happens? You stop thinking deeply. Now your brain becomes passive. Now imagine the opposite. You create space. You remove noise. What happens? Your brain starts thinking. Now your ideas improve. Now here is something powerful. Silence builds intelligence. Now let's go even deeper. Most distractions are not important, but they feel urgent. Now imagine this. A notification comes. You feel the need to check it. What happens? You break your focus. Now your important work suffers. Now here is something very important. Not everything deserves your attention. Now imagine this. You choose what to focus on. What happens? Your control increases. Now your productivity grows. Now here is something very powerful. Discipline is saying no to distractions. Now imagine this. You limit your screen time. You reduce unnecessary apps. What happens? You gain time. Now you use that time for growth. Now here is something very important. Where your attention goes, your life goes. Now imagine this. You focus on learning. You focus on improving. What happens? Your life moves forward. Now imagine the opposite. You focus on distractions. What happens? Your life stays stuck. Now let's go even deeper. You don't need to remove everything, Just reduce what is unnecessary. Now imagine this. You create a clean environment. Less noise, less distraction. What happens? Your mind becomes calm. Now your focus becomes strong. Now here is something very powerful. Even 1 hour of deep focus is more powerful than 5 hours of distraction. Now let me give you a powerful line to remember. Remove distractions, because what you focus on daily becomes your future. So, from today, limit your screen time. Avoid useless content. Protect your attention. Focus on what matters, because when you control your attention, you control your life. Lesson 5. Exercise often. The 5th way to train your brain is exercise often. Now understand this clearly. Exercise is not just for your body, it is for your brain. Now let's go deeper. Most people think exercise is only about fitness, losing weight, building muscles, looking good. But the truth is, exercise directly improves your brain. Now imagine this. You move your body. You walk. You run. You stretch. What happens? Your blood flow increases. Now your brain gets more oxygen. Now here is something very important. More oxygen means better brain function. Now imagine this. Your brain is active. What happens? You think clearly. Now your focus improves. Now here is the powerful shift. A healthy body creates a powerful mind. Now let's go even deeper. Exercise also improves your mood. Now imagine this. You feel stressed. You feel tired. But you exercise. What happens? Your body releases positive chemicals. Now you feel better. Now your mood improves. Now here is something very powerful. Movement reduces stress. Now imagine this. Instead of overthinking, you move your body. What happens? Your mind relaxes. Now your stress decreases. Now here is something very important. Exercise supports your brain cells. It helps your neurons work better. Now imagine this. Your brain becomes stronger. What happens? Your memory improves. Now your learning becomes faster. Now here is something powerful. Exercise increases energy. Now imagine this. You feel lazy. You feel low. But you start moving. What happens? Your energy increases. Now you feel active. Now your productivity improves. Now let's go even deeper. A lazy body creates a lazy mind. Now imagine this. You don't move much. You sit all day. What happens? Your energy drops. Now your thinking becomes slow. Now imagine the opposite. You stay active. You move regularly. What happens? Your brain stays alert. Now your thinking becomes sharp. Now here is something very important. You don't need heavy workouts. Simple movement is enough. Walking, stretching, light exercise. Now imagine this. You stay consistent. What happens? Your brain improves daily. Now here is something very powerful. Consistency beats intensity. Now imagine this. You exercise a little every day. What happens? Over time, your body and brain both become strong. Now here is something very important. Exercise also builds discipline. Now imagine this. You follow a routine. What happens? You train your mind to stay consistent. Now your habits improve. Now here is something powerful. A disciplined body creates a disciplined mind. Now let's go even deeper. Exercise also improves sleep. Now imagine this. You move during the day. What happens? Your body relaxes at night. Now you sleep better. Now your brain recovers. Now here is something very powerful. Better sleep creates better thinking. Now let me give you a powerful line to remember. Exercise your body, because a strong body supports a powerful brain. So from today, don't stay inactive. Don't ignore movement. Don't wait for motivation. Start small. Move daily. Stay active. Because when your body moves, your brain improves. Lesson 6. Keep a journal. The 6th way to train your brain is keep a journal. Now understand this clearly. Your thoughts are powerful, but if you don't understand them, they control you. Now let's go deeper every day. Your mind is full of thoughts, ideas, emotions, decisions, memories. But most people never stop to understand them. They think, but they don't reflect. Now imagine this. You go through your day without thinking deeply. What happens? You repeat the same mistakes. Now your growth becomes slow. Now imagine the opposite. You write your thoughts daily. What happens? You start understanding yourself. Now here's something very important. Journaling creates self-awareness. Now imagine this. You write about your day, your actions, your feelings, your decisions. What happens? You see patterns. Now you understand what is working and what is not. Now here is the powerful shift. Awareness creates improvement. Now let's go even deeper. Journaling helps you track your progress. Now imagine this. You write your goals. You write your actions. What happens? You can see your growth. Now you stay motivated. Now here is something very powerful. When you see progress, you feel confident. Now imagine this. You improve daily. What happens? Your belief in yourself increases. Now here is something very important. Journaling also improves memory. Now imagine this. You write important things. What happens? Your brain remembers better, because writing strengthens memory. Now here is something powerful. What you write stays longer in your mind. Now let's go even deeper. Journaling helps you clear your mind. Now imagine this. You have many thoughts. Stress, confusion, Overthinking. What happens? Your mind feels heavy. Now imagine the opposite. You write everything down. What happens? Your mind becomes light. Now your thoughts become clear. Now here is something very powerful. Writing removes mental clutter. Now imagine this. You organize your thoughts. What happens? You think better. Now your decisions improve. Now here is something very important. Journaling helps you learn from mistakes. Now imagine this. You reflect on your day. What went wrong? What you can improve? What happens? You grow faster. Now you don't repeat the same mistakes. Now here is something powerful. Reflection creates growth. Now imagine this. You think about your actions daily. What happens? You become better every day. Now let's go even deeper. Journaling also builds discipline. Now imagine this. You write daily. What happens? You create a habit. Now your consistency improves. Now here is something very important. You don't need to write perfectly. You don't need long pages. Just write honestly. Now imagine this. You express your real thoughts. What happens? You feel free. Now your mind becomes calm. Now here is something very powerful. Your journal becomes your personal guide. Now imagine this. You read your old entries. What happens? You see how much you have grown. Now you feel proud. Now let me give you a powerful line to remember. Write your thoughts daily, because clarity comes when you understand your own mind. So from today, don't ignore your thoughts. Don't live without reflection. Don't keep everything in your mind. Write it down. Understand yourself. Improve daily. Because when you know your mind, you can train your mind. Lesson 7. Stay consistent. The 7th way to train your brain is stay consistent. Now understand this clearly. Consistency is more powerful than talent. It is more powerful than motivation. And it is more powerful than intensity. Now let's go deeper. Most people start strong, but they don't continue. They feel motivated one day. They work hard for a few days. Then they stop. And because of this, they never see real results. Now imagine this. You do something once, then stop. What happens? Nothing changes. Now imagine the opposite. You do something daily. Even if it is small, what happens? Slow progress begins. Now here is something very important. Small actions repeated daily create big results. Now imagine this. You read a little every day. You exercise a little every day. You improve a little every day. What happens? Over time, your life changes completely. Now here is the powerful shift. Success is not about doing more. It is about doing consistently. Now let's go even deeper. Consistency trains your brain. Now imagine this. You follow a routine daily. What happens? Your brain learns patterns. Now your habits become automatic. Now here is something very powerful. When habits become automatic, you don't need motivation. Now imagine this. You don't feel like working, but you still do it. What happens? You build discipline. Now your mind becomes strong. Now here is something very important. Motivation is temporary, but discipline is permanent. Now imagine this. You depend only on motivation. What happens? You stop when you don't feel like it. Now imagine the opposite. You depend on discipline. What happens? You continue, even when it is hard. Now here is something powerful. Consistency builds self-trust. Now imagine this. You do what you say every day. What happens? You trust yourself. Now your confidence grows. Now let's go even deeper. Consistency also reduces stress. Now imagine this. You delay work. You break routines. What happens? You feel pressure. Now imagine the opposite. You stay consistent. You complete tasks daily. What happens? Your mind feels calm. Now your life feels organized. Now here is something very important. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to show up. Now imagine this. You miss one day. What happens? It's okay, but you don't quit. Now you continue. Now here is something very powerful. Consistency is not about never failing. It is about never quitting. Now imagine this. You keep going, no matter what. What happens? You become unstoppable. Now let's go even deeper. Consistency creates long-term growth. Now imagine this. You stay consistent for months. What happens? Your results multiply. Now your life transforms. Now here's something very important. Time rewards consistency. Now imagine this. You stay patient. You keep working. What happens? Success comes. Now here is something powerful. People don't fail because they are weak. They fail because they stop too early. Now imagine this. You don't stop. What happens? You win. Now let me give you a powerful line to remember. Stay consistent. Because small daily actions create powerful long-term results. So from today, don't start and stop. Don't depend on motivation. Don't quit early. Show up daily. Stay disciplined. Keep going. Because when you stay consistent, you don't just train your brain, you transform your life. Lesson 8. Leave your comfort zone. The eighth and final way to train your brain is leave your comfort zone. Now understand this clearly. Your comfort zone feels safe, but it keeps you stuck. Now let's go deeper. Inside your comfort zone, everything feels easy. No pressure, no fear, no challenge, but also no growth. Now imagine this. You do the same things every day. You avoid challenges. You choose what is easy. What happens? Your life stays the same. Now here is something very important. Growth only happens when you feel uncomfortable. Now imagine the opposite. You try something new. You face difficulty. You step into the unknown. What happens? Your brain wakes up. Now you start learning. Now here is the powerful shift. Discomfort is not a problem. It is a signal of growth. Now let's go even deeper. Your brain adapts to challenges. Now imagine this. You do something difficult. What happens? At first it feels hard, but slowly you improve. Now it becomes easier. Now here is something very powerful. What feels uncomfortable today becomes your strength tomorrow. Now imagine this. You avoid discomfort. What happens? You stay weak. Now imagine the opposite. You face discomfort. What happens? You become strong. Now here is something very important. Confidence comes from doing hard things. Now imagine this. You try something you were afraid of. What happens? You succeed, or you learn. Either way, you grow. Now here is something powerful. Every challenge builds your brain. Now imagine this. You solve difficult problems. You face fears. What happens? Your thinking improves. Now your brain becomes sharper. Now let's go even deeper. Most people stay average because they stay comfortable. Now imagine this. You do only what is easy. What happens? You never discover your full potential. Now imagine the opposite. You push your limits. What happens? You discover new abilities. Now your life expands. Now here is something very important. Your comfort zone is small, but your potential is huge. Now imagine this. You step outside your comfort zone daily. What happens? Your confidence grows. Now your fear decreases. Now here is something very powerful. Fear disappears when you face it. Now imagine this. You avoid fear. What happens? It grows. Now imagine the opposite. You face fear. What happens? It becomes smaller. Now here is something very important. You don't need big changes. Start small. Now imagine this. You do one uncomfortable thing daily. What happens? Slowly, your comfort zone expands. Now your life improves. Now here is something powerful. A strong brain is built in uncomfortable moments. Now imagine this. You choose growth over comfort. What happens? Your mindset becomes powerful. Now your future becomes strong. Now let me give you a powerful line to remember. Leave your comfort zone, because everything you want is on the other side of discomfort. So from today, don't choose easy every time. Don't avoid challenges. Don't stay where you are comfortable. Take risks. Try new things. Face discomfort. Because when you leave your comfort zone, you don't just train your brain, you transform your entire life. Now understand this clearly. Your brain shapes your life. The way you think, the way you focus, the way you act. Everything starts in your mind. And if you train your brain daily, your life will improve daily. But if you ignore it, your potential stays hidden. Most people want success, but they don't train their mind. They wait for motivation, but they don't build discipline. So, from today, don't wait. Start small. Read a little. Think better. Focus more. Act daily. Because small habits create big changes. And always remember, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent. If you learned something valuable from this video, then don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell. Because we bring you powerful lessons that can transform your mindset and your life. And always remember, train your brain, and your life will follow. I will see you in the next video.